Family and friends, if you're able, please be upstanding. Good morning, family and friends. Please be seated. A very warm welcome to you all, whether you join us here today in person or via our webcast. We are here today to remember and celebrate the life of Derek Stewart. I'm Denise Jarvis. I'm a civil celebrant and I'm privileged to have been asked by Derek's family to lead this tribute and personal celebration of his life. Let's focus on the human values that we all share, accepting that each of us is unique. We have come together today from different places. We are all at different stages on our journey through life, and we naturally look at life in different ways. You have, however, one thing in common. At some points and to various degrees, your lives have all been touched by Derek. Your lives have all been made richer by knowing Derek, and the love and friendship that he shared with you can be carried by you always. Your presence today is your own personal tribute to him and shows the esteem and affection you had for him. You'll all miss Derek in your own unique way and remember him fondly with affection and gratitude for the part, however large or small, he played in your lives. So as you gather here today as a community, let us be grateful for knowing Derek, loving him and having his love returned. I'd like to share with you a lovely, fitting poem for a man so active in trade unions, the words of which you'll find in your order of service. It's Shop Steward. A shop steward knocked at the heavenly gate. His face was scared and old. He stood before the wearer of his fate for admission to the fold. "What have you done," St. Peter said, "to gain admission here?" "I've been a shop steward, sir," he said, "for many a year." The pearly gate swung open wide. St. Peter touched the bell. "Come in and choose your harp," he said. "You've had your share of hell." Derek Albert Stewart, known as Derek, was born on Wednesday the 31st of January 1945 in Rotten Row Maternity Hospital in Glasgow. Derek was the eldest by 10 minutes of twins born to mum Kathleen and dad Bert, wee sister Kathy following him into the world. Sadly, Kathleen died in childbirth and Bert's sister Jessie and her husband Jock McLean took the babies in and raised them as their own. Derek and Kathy inherited a brother and sisters too, and Betty, who's sadly no longer with us, Donald and Mary. Life must have been hard for Jessie and Jock, but they welcomed the children into their lives and their hearts, and they were never treated as anything other than their own. Jessie made the best clouty dumpling, shortbread and bramble jam by a country mile. and our 5 children raved about our amazing home-cooked food. Derek was a poorly baby. He was born with blue baby syndrome, which is a term for cyanosis, a condition where a baby's skin appears blue or bluish grey due to lack of oxygen in the blood. The underlying cause needs immediate medical attention, and this meant that Derek spent the first almost 5 years of his life in the Sick Kids Hospital in Edinburgh. With the love of his parents, Jessie and Joke, he thrived though, and a once sick baby turned into a healthy boy whose only indication of his earlier illness was asthma. Bert married again, and Derek and Kathy had stepbrothers Ian and Colin, whom they didn't actually know until they were into their adult years. Meanwhile, Derek was brought up in Sauchie, attending Fishcross Primary and Fourbraes High School. When I asked the family what Derek's favourite subjects were, they said emphatically that Derek did not like school one little bit. He disliked all of his subjects. Now, we know that wasn't because Derek wasn't clever, far from it. His active roles in trade unions and later as local councillor and provost proved that he had a quick and clever brain. It's only really quite recently that society has come to accept that school and the national curriculum is simply not for everyone. What Derek was passionate about was football, in particular Rangers Football Club, who he followed all of his life, becoming a season ticket holder for Ibrox in his adult life. Derek was actually at the Old Firm derby on the 2nd of January 1971. This game had a late equaliser and resulted in fans who were leaving on stairway 13 being crushed as the stairway gave way. The infamous Ibrox disaster, as it's known, claimed the lives of 66 supporters and injuring over 200 people. Madge and the family were beside themselves as the disaster had been reported on the news. But it was long before mobile phones, of course, so the supporters' loved ones didn't know they were safe until they walked through the door. Thankfully, he did, but not until the pub had shut, much to the stress of the family. Derek kept all the programmes for the matches he attended throughout his life, so that's a considerable collection. He liked to kick about too with his pals Ian Stirling, Geordie Rennie, Wattie Banks and Alec Brady. Despite the lean war and post-war years and the family being large, Jessie and Joke ensured the kids all experienced nice day trips to the seaside. They'd all travel by train to the lovely Fife coast, such as Aberdour Silver Sands, where Jessie would unpack a huge picnic for the family of 7 and the kids could all run around on the beach for the day. Kathy recalled that once a year, on the lead up to Christmas, they'd go through to Glasgow to visit Auntie Anne and they'd get to go to John Lewis to see Santa. After their trip into town, they'd get to spend time playing with their cousins Meg, Robert and Una, and the memories of those times are so fond. As Derek grew in years, the siblings spoke of what a wee devil he was. He was aye getting a row when he came in for being up to some or another. His headmaster at Fishcross Primary said that he wouldn't amount to anything unless he was wearing a white coat. How wrong could he have been? At 15, Derek was happy to leave his school days behind and join the world of work in Whiteman's Sawmill in Alloa. He then moved to Devonvale Mill, which was to shape the rest of his life, but there's more about that to come. He then moved to Carsbridge Distillery, where he worked in various roles over 20 years, becoming shop steward and union leader with the GMB. There is also more about that to come. The defining thing for Derek at Devonvale, though, was Madge Spence from Tullibody, whom he'd had his eye on and wanted to take her out. It was 1969, and Derek worked in the Jesternor part of the mill, and he got his pal to phone Madge's department and ask her out for him. The words were, and I quote, "My pal wants to go out with you." Madge replies, "Who is it?" "Derek Stewart," says the pal. "I dinna ken him," says Madge, "so no." Pal says, "I'll point him out to you." The rest, as the saying goes, is history. The first date was set for the Devonvale Hall and amongst their work colleagues, and it was a place where they were to socialise lots as a couple. They were quite rightly smitten by each other. And a date was set for their wedding, the 3rd of April 1971 in St Serph's Church in Tullabody. Pals Margaret and Morris were their bridesmaid and best man, and after a meal with their wedding party, they had an ease up to celebrate. When I asked Madge if they'd had a honeymoon, she says no, he was too miserable. They soon settled into married life in a cottage in Morse Road in Tillicoultry, and Madge recalled the old couple who lived next door. The husband of the couple had gone to answer a call of nature in the outside toilet, and whilst there, his wife locked him in so she could go to the pub. I like her style. Later the same year, the couple welcomed their first son into the world, Stephen. Sadly, Stephen lived for only 2 days, which must have devastated the young couple. Left with no option, they picked up the pieces and simply got on with life, moving house in 1972 to the High Street in Tillicoultry. Madge's brother Harry and his fiancée Liz got married the same year, and as Derek and Madge had a spare room, they moved in there. Harry recalls vividly a cold winter with heavy snow lying, and whilst on the job, his bare backside on show through an open window, Derek took aim with a snowball and scalped it. Bullseye. In 1974, Thomas, or Tam as we know him, was born. In 78, they welcomed Derek into the world. And a year later, Craig arrived, their second attempt at a daughter. And Derek says, Derek never let him forget that, ever. Craig has always insisted that they left the best until last right enough. The boys recall a dad who was a hard worker, often working night shifts at the distillery, and the boys recall that his snoring was so bad that when they were out playing in the street during the summer holidays and the windows were open, the whole street could hear him. They also recall that their dad entertained them with stories of how he fought in the war against 500 Japs with just a penknife, a stick and a bit of string, and how he beat the lot of them. He spoke of making a gutty out of his stick and an elastic band. His stories were so colourful, so real. It wasn't until the boys were a bit older that they realised that their dad was born the same year that the Second World War ended, and he must have been telling them a bit of a tall tale, entertaining, but it was a tall tale nonetheless. The boys recall lovely family holidays to static caravans in Anstruther and Scarborough where they'd travel by train, and a dad who, how will we say it, was an opportunist when it came to procurement. Derek had a knack of acquiring things. A big caged bin, which he produced out the back of a camper van when they arrived home from a holiday in Anstruther. That stayed in his garden for years. A walk along the 11th and 12th holes at Shaw Park Golf Course during a busy Pro-Am with Tam saw Derek saying he needed a pee, leaving Tam standing alone for a few minutes. When he came back, he had a rake out of one of the bunkers down one trouser leg, exclaiming, "That'll do for the plot," as he walked away looking like the Gestapo. What a man. The family recall the legendary parties had by Derek and Madge and all the memorable times had after a few G&Ts. When the boys were wee, they'd be upstairs listening to all the shenanigans of the adults. They recall that at one party, early on in the night, in Derek's haste to get into the lemonade, he stabbed himself in the stomach with a Stanley blade. Margaret bandaged him up, but he had to go for a trip to A&E nonetheless. No one he'd finished his drink though. He was a half-empty rather than half-full type of man. He was then given the nom de plume of the original 6.5 pence man. The family recall that Derek never drove and he would cycle to work. They also recall that after many a shift, he'd arrive back home out the back of a transit van, a wee bit worse for wear for too much of the angel's share. They also recall that he went through a fair few bikes. If he arrived home in the van, the bike was almost never seen again. Politics were important to Derek, as we know, and he was active as a shop steward. In 1988, he was approached by Jimmy Miller, another man known as Mr. Socky, who was ready to step down as councillor. Jimmy admired Derek's passion and saw similar qualities in Derek that he himself possessed. Derek immediately said thanks, but no, he was really into his union work and perhaps didn't feel quite ready to take on the step. Although the men were a generation apart, they were so very similar in their beliefs and their sense of community and fairness. Jimmy was a larger-than-life character, a freeman of Clickmannanshire, an accolade that in time would be bestowed upon Derek too. Derek relented after a bit of persuasion and said to Jimmy, "I'll give it a go for 4 years then." He lasted 34. Derek held his surgery on a Friday night and would go to the Mansfield afterward for a drink. His Friday night drinking buddies were good pals, comrade Bobby McGill, a real character, wee Geordie Rennie, they were the best of pals, Peter Johnson, Jimmy Watson, and sometimes they would be joined by Alec Brady, especially at the Fishcross Club or the Burns Club in Colesnaughton. Derek loved a lager, a whisky, and a Gordon's and tonic. A Gordon's, not Bombay Sapphire, no Tanqueray, no Sip Smiths, and certainly not a Beefeater. When Martin changed the gin to Beefeater at the Mansfield, Derek asked him to change it back. In their opinion, the Beefeater was shite. Martin stuck to his guns thinking he had won the battle, but Derek actually decided to call Martin's dad in Spain to let him know that they wouldn't be back, and lo and behold, they were enjoying a Gordon's in the bar the following week. And boy, could Derek sink a G&T. His family and friends recall that he loved a Burns supper too. His Burns season would run from January to July, or at least that's what he told Madge. There were many memorable or not so memorable days spent on union business. The memory, of course, was largely dependent on how much booze was consumed. The boys would go to the provost room and share a dram, and brother-in-law Harry recalled that on a GMB conference they both attended, they entered a pub quiz as the Grand Slammers, and they won it. It was 4 a.m. the following morning when they finally called it a night, or a morning. Harry also recalled many a boys' afternoon at Devonvale and Ochilview. They'd no come home empty-handed. Harry often winning the steak pie, and Derek would win the chicken. Derek and Kenny would walk into the Labour Club room, Jack and Victor style, and say to the barman, "2 pints, you prick." Kenny and Derek always seemed to have misplaced, Derek always seemed to have misplaced his wallet though. As you know, Derek was a very well-liked and popular man, and being a local councillor, he literally couldn't pass anyone without having a chat or, if in the pub, being offered a drink. An invitation he would very rarely knock back, even if it was only just the one. The family recalled that he'd helped out the local Chinese takeaway in Socky at a time, fondly known as Chinky Sam's. Sam turned up at the door to offer Derek gifts to show his appreciation, but of course Derek couldn't accept them. Sam was insistent though, and left what could only be described as a banquet at the front door. Needless to say, the neighbours were treated to Chinese food for the next few days. Derek advocated for people we truly cared, but you already know that. He was well thought of in the showman community and was in the Showman's Guild, which was set up to reserve the rights of the travelling showman. He was in the Alva Games Committee with Comrade McGill, something they were very proud of and worked rigorously to support each year. The respect was mutual, and now, every year, there is a hill race named after both of them. It didn't stop there though. He was also part of the licensing board, the police board and the fire board. He was a member of COSLA and met the Queen at the garden party, his lady provost, Madge, by his side. He just wanted to help people in any way he could. That was Derek. That was the boys' dad. I'd now like to invite good friend Councillor Kenny Errol forward to share with you some memories of Derek and his political life. Kenny.
Thank you. When I became an August councillor in 2003, I entered Greenfield still in a state of shock. But one of the first people I met that day was a real Kent face, Derek Stewart. For those who may not know, my sister-in-law is Margie's sister. After usual introductions, Derek took me aside and gave me some sage advice, and that was always in time for a constituents' inquiry, because it may be the most important thing on their mind at that time. And always reply to any inquiry, even if the answer may not be what the inquirer expects to hear. I've carried that advice with me for all these years, and I've passed it on to the newer councillors. At Christmas, Derek would dress up as Santa Claus for the OEP Christmas shindig here in Town Hall. And for the children when they visited Greenfield, the Greenfield House. However, the children were just a wee bit smarter. And when Santa spoke, the children knew who it was. I would say, thank you, Santa Derek. Because you know, Derek had a very distinctive voice. That mantle has now been passed to me. After he was nominated for the position of provost, he would chair the council meetings fairly, treating everyone equally. If you thought he would treat you any differently because of the colour he or she wore, then Derek would soon put you in your place. As Bob McGill and others soon found out. As promised, Derek was invited to a number of social occasions, and I was lucky enough to go along with him. But when I thought that Derek was being kind to this new councillor, I soon found out that there was always an ulterior motive, and I was there to ensure it was always smartly turned out. But Derek always felt that the chain of office had to be counting down, and often described it as something that looked like a laddie chain. He soon sorted that out. But these social events were where he introduced me to the wonders of gin and tonic. When Derek was speaking, people listened. But sometimes it was for the slight errors in his speech that many enjoyed. For instance, on one occasion, a contractor was failing to meet the terms of a contract, and Derek was right on the phone to an officer demanding that he go through the contract with a fine toothbrush. On another occasion, he and some fellow councillors attended a conference in either Blackpool or Brighton, along with another. He shall remain nameless, but he was known to have short arms and deep pockets. And he would always find it necessary to visit the toilet when it was around. But Derek could go again by managing to get short pockets key, and ordered numerous rounds of drinks and charged them to his room. We only found this when he went to check out. And finally, many years ago, the Comanche Council finally entered the digital age, and issued officers, foremen and councillors with BlackBerry phones. For those people of a certain age, like Derek, this proved a challenge. On one particular occasion, Derek and I were attending an event here in Town Hall when he tried unsuccessfully to get a taxi home. And he turned to an officer and said, and I quote, "I can't get this bloody thing to work. You try." When the officer took the holder device, he burst out laughing. And I said, "What program do you want to work, Derek?" Derek was mystified until I explained that instead of his mobile phone, he brought the remote control for the telly. Why person listening to coordination shoot that out? Derek, you taught me so much. and for that I'll be eternally grateful. I'll miss you, brother. Rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Time waits for no man, and soon the boys weren't boys any longer. Derek was proud of his sons and how they have forged their own paths in life. Tam is an income maximisation officer in Stirling Council, helping people with their benefits. His dad was so proud of him for being in a role which helps the community. Derek is a financial coordinator at Stirling Uni, another proud accolade for Derek and Craig. He went into the pub game, leasing the Oakwood for a few years before plucking up the courage to go into business with his good friend Greg McMullen at the Royal Oak. They have all done okay. They have all followed their dad's work ethic, although they have always insisted that they took their brains for their mum. Derek and Madge were delighted to become grandparents too. Derek was known as Grandad or Socky Granda to Craig's son Noah, who's 14, Tam's children Amy, who's 13, and Michael, who's 8. Craig recalled that when he was managing the Oakwood at the time that Noah was born, there was a Memorial Day going on and the pub was really, really busy. Derek, upon receiving the call, rushed through the bar door exclaiming, "It's a boy!" Needless to say, there was a few drinks consumed, and about 3 hours later, a very inebriated Derek was being carried over the road by poor Gary Evans, who ended up missing his work for a few days as he gubbed his back in the process. The grandchildren all have such fond memories of their granddad and found it funny when their dads would get a telling off from their granddad when he told them off. Tam recalled that his dad was an experienced dad, 3 kids of his own, 3 grandkids, right? Tam also recalled that whilst Amy was a baby, his folks would watch her a couple of days a week as both he and Angela worked. At the time, Craig ran the Oakwood next door, and Madge would help him out when there were functions on, like funerals, with the food and serving. So this day, Derek was left with Amy for a couple of hours. About an hour in, he walks into the pub and hands her to Mum, their mum. "Madge, you'll need to change her. She's filled her nappy." 3 laddies and 3 grandkids, and he never changed a nappy in his life. He was human, just like the rest of us though, and when he took the huff, you would know. Just ask Madge. Young Derek reckons the record was about 6 weeks that they stopped speaking to each other in the house, usually over something mundane, but neither would give in. And Derek, Tam and Craig would have to be the go-between stroke communicators between them both. "Tell your mum there's somebody on the phone for her. Tell your dad's tease out," all whilst usually sitting in the same room. Tam recalled that 10 years ago, Alloa, his team, played Rangers in the Challenge Cup. It was screened on BBC Alba. The result was Rangers 2, Alloa 3. Tam phoned his dad for the ground to make him aware of the score. And in turn, Derek told him to F off, hung up the phone, and didn't speak to him for 3 days. Craig recalled that he used to get his dad to help him out at the bar on a Monday afternoon at the Oakwood. In the beginning, he seemed really keen. Derek would cover the bar for a couple of hours, allowing Craig to go and get his banking done. Craig, in turn, would always come back to the pub with a selection of pies from the butchers for the punters. It didn't take long to figure out why Derek loved the shift. He'd spend an afternoon on the pool table with Jimmy McCara, a couple of pints down, 2 pies in his pocket, and away he would go, and he still insisted on getting paid for it. Family and friends, we're now going to take this time so that you can remember Derek in your own way. Hold him in your hearts and remember the good times you spent with him. Whilst we do so, we're going to listen to a lovely track. It's sang by Janet Devlin. It's her rendition of Simply the Best.
Come to heart, I see the start of every night and every day. In your eyes, I get lost, I get washed away. Just as long as I'm here in your arms, I could be in no better place. You're simply the best, better than all the rest, better than anyone I've ever met. I'm stuck on your heart and hang on every word you say. Tear us apart, baby. I would rather be dead. Each time you leave me, I start losing control. You're walking away with my heart and my soul. I can feel you even when I'm alone. Oh, baby, don't let go. You're simply the best, better than all the rest, better than anyone I've ever met. You're the best.
Family and friends, I would now like to invite friend Dave Clark forward to share some memories with you. Dave, would you please come forward? Go that way, Dave, there's a wire here. If you go round the front, there's a wire here. Go round the front.
Right.
That's it, thank you. No, right.
Just wait. Okay.
So you didn't trip.
Got it. It's absolutely great to have friends. It's a marvellous thing. And I look at this hall, upstairs and downstairs. Derek had a few. You hear me? Yeah. Derek had a few friends, didn't he just? I'm thoughtful of the time when I first met Derek. This is back in the 1980s. And various folk in the room, they'll remember that. Tommy Adams, Margaret Patterson, her husband was here. Graham Watt and so on. And we fought for justice back in these days. And we fought each other back in these days. We argued like hell. I usually lost. It was my blood that lay on the floor. But we also laughed a lot in these days. It was a group of people that were at one with each other. We didn't take prisoners. When we did something stupid, we got nailed for it, and we had to live with it for the next 6 months. So I'm going to tell you a story about Derek that still has me laughing since these days. He's a brother, and as brothers, you laugh together, and you laugh at the absurdities. This goes way, way back. It goes back in the day to just after the dinosaurs had died off. And the first Fort Cortina had rolled out the swamp. It was a time when Clintmanshire Council put its rubbish in black bags and they put them in the street. The day of the bin man was like the day of the apocalypse. You had seagulls dying bombing like spooky divers in a roof wall. You had rats forming organised crime groups to raid the bins. And squirrels just carried off anything that was nailed to the floor. By lunchtime, the streets looked like a scene from Mad Max, Bindi. Then came along my dear friend, Derek Stewart, Councillor Stewart, later to become Provost Stewart. He attended a cutting-edge environmental conference down south. Now, down south was a legendary place. It was a place where they had recycling bins. It was a place that sometimes with the electricity that worked all day. Now, Derek would turn back north, a changed man. I've seen the future, he says. And it's wheelie bins. We colleagues thought it must have blown. We take the rise out of for weeks and weeks and weeks with that. Next should be telling us we're going to have dinner today and coffee that is the instant, Derek. Come on. But he was persuasive. He was maybe even visionary. And so the humble black bag gave way to the mighty wheelie bin, courtesy of Provost Derek Stewart. So today, when you look at wheelie bins throughout Scotland, you can trace the genealogy of them. That great plastic receptacle, and I come from Larkhall, we sometimes use it as a Lambeth drum through Larkhall. That great plastic receptacle, the line leads straight back to Sauchies. Every time you see a wheelie bin on the road, trace it straight back to Sauchies. And Derek's influence didn't stop there. Somewhere far away in Bolton, a certain Brian Potter, alias Peter Kay, the comedian, he was in the television Phoenix Nights. And I loved it. I thought it was a really funny programme. The guy in the wheelchair, remember him? Really funny. And he's sitting there one night and he announces, he proclaims, I've seen the future. And it's garlic bread, he says. Well, if only Derek had taken copyright out of the phrase. He could have funded a fleet of gold-plated wheelie bins, at least paid somebody to deal with the damn seagulls that was ripping them up all over the place. That's a story I still laugh about with Derek. And when you talk about Derek, every time I see a wheelie bin, I'll remember the man. It was dear to me, and it was dear to everybody else in here. So, I hope your memories are as fond as mine.
Thank you very much, Dave. Derek was so community spirited. He loved his greenhouse in the back garden and he cultivated many plants and flowers, which he'd gift to the Sauchie community, often leaving people with bags full of vegetables and pots of flowers. Derek used to read the Alloa Advertiser back in the day. The family thought he was playing Spot the Dog, the puzzle in the paper, but in reality, he was only looking to see if he could find his own photo. He would be annoyed if he'd never seen it at least twice, and it would be considered a bad week at the office. This was testament, though, to the number of social gatherings and council functions he would attend. He loved what he'd done. He loved helping people. It wasn't about any accolade or applause. That's just who he was. All good things need to come to an end, though, and in 2022, Derek decided that it was time to stand down from his council duties after 34 years and spend some long overdue time with his beloved wife, Madge. The greenhouse. This was also the phrase, "He's doing my head in," became common around the Stewart household. 1 year into retirement, Derek received the news that he had been motioned for the freedom of Clackmannanshire by Councillor Craig Holden in recognition of his years of service to the local community. An honour only awarded on 3 previous occasions. Derek was overwhelmed, humbled, and so proud of this acknowledgement, as were his family. Fortunately, he never took up the opportunity to walk his herd of sheep up Sauchie Main Street, something that, funnily enough, he was entitled to do. Derek had a great personality. He was cheery and very sociable. If you didn't like Derek, well, there was something wrong with you. He was some man for one man. And so it was at Forth Valley Royal on the 14th of October. Derek peacefully closed his eyes for the final time. He leaves behind family and friends who are so very sad of his passing, but so incredibly grateful to have had this wonderful, community-spirited Mr. Sauchie in their lives. I'd like to share with you these comforting words from Victor Hugo. To live on in the hearts of those we love is not to die. Family and friends, this part of our service is drawing to a close, and we will shortly accompany Derek on his final journey to Sunnyside Cemetery, where he will be laid to rest. Please make your way directly thereafter this part of the service. Upon leaving the room, if so desired, you will have the opportunity to contribute to the retiral collection in aid of the ongoing work of Strathcarron Hospice, the proceeds of which will be donated in Derek's loving and lasting memory. The family would like to thank Greg from the Royal Oak and everyone in Sauchie and the wider community, all of Clackmannanshire really, for their support and messages of condolence. Thanks must also go to the nurses at Forth Valley Royal for taking such good care of Derek. Thanks also to the staff here at Town Hall, and a special thanks to Roy and McIntyre funeral directors, in particular to Stevie McIntyre for holding both Derek and the family in their tender, loving care at this tough time. After we have laid Derek to rest, you are warmly invited by the family to return here to the Town Hall for refreshments laid on by the Royal Oak. So you're in for a treat. Thanks to all of you for joining us today to pay your respects to Derek. As we leave the room, we're going to listen to quite possibly the most appropriate track I've ever played at a funeral. It's the Straubs with Part of the Union. Family and friends, if you're able, please be upstanding. Family and friends, please be reseated. family and friends, please be upstanding.
Amazed at what I